I will not review the mountain of evidence that implicates my own country, the United States, in this act of war against the Russian Federation and the Federal Republic of Germany. There was no compelling national security interest to justify the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which has inflicted significant economic pain on the people of Germany. This attack accomplished nothing in terms of helping bring an end to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine's NATO facilitators. It made matters worse. During my time at the CIA, I acquired an understanding of how covert action was planned and executed in places as diverse as Afghanistan and Central America. Such operations are not conducted spur of the moment. They are funded, planned, rehearsed before being executed. Seymour Hersh's account of the U.S. covert action against the Nord Stream pipeline is consistent with the knowledge I acquired during my time at the agency in the late 1980s.
Grateful to the US political commentator, Mr. Larry Johnson, for his substantive statement. Mr. Johnson has a wealth of experience on combating terrorism, including working for US government bodies. He clearly demonstrated just how odd and absurd any attempts being made by the US authorities and their allies to turn a blind eye and to divert the attention of the international community from the terrorist attack on the Nord Stream gas pipelines look. Even American citizens themselves have a hard time hiding their outrage at Washington's actions. A crime was committed, but no one intends to find the guilty party nor to hold them to account. It's as if a crime was committed, a murder, say, and then a year went by and the investigative authorities concluded that the victim was murdered. This scenario is really theater of the absurd.
This is my video update on this Sunday afternoon, April the 28th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with an update from the front lines of Ukraine, a very quick update on what is going on the front lines in Ukraine, because we are seeing a collapse, a Ukraine military collapse, especially in the Avdiivka direction. The area of BITCHUTE is either surrounded or about to be surrounded, and the latest reports are that the Ukrainian troops in BITCHUTE are negotiating their surrender. We have reports claiming that the areas of Keramik and Novokalinovo are also collapsing. The Russians are about to take these areas or have taken these areas, and the latest reports claim that the Russian military is making progress in the area of Arkhangelsk, and they are about to capture this village town. And this is just the Avdiivka direction. We're not even talking about Chasiv Yar. We're not talking about the Russian advances in the Kharkov direction or the Russian fabs that are softening up Ugledar, which will be a very tough battle, but the Russian military, they are using their fabs in Ugledar. So a catastrophic situation for the Ukraine military on the front line. And this is from the Russian Ministry of Defense. Kiev's losses of military personnel have surpassed 8,000 over the past week amid Moscow's continued offensive in Donbass, the Russian Defense Ministry said in a series of Telegram posts on Saturday. The nation's military seized 2 settlements from Ukrainian forces and has gained ground across the region, it stated. Moscow's forces have taken control over the villages of Novo-Mikhailovka in the central part of the Donetsk People's Republic and of Bogdanovka near the key strategic town of Chasiv Yar in the DPR's north. The statements read. Even Ukraine military commander Syrsky, he had to update collective West officials on the situation on the front line, and he had to admit that Ukraine is having a hard time fighting Russia. Syrsky said the situation on the front lines is difficult. He told Kiev's Western backers during a virtual Ramstein group meeting on Friday. I informed the coalition members about the difficult operational and strategic situation, which has a tendency to get worse. Syrsky posted on Telegram. Kiev urgently needs missiles, ammunition, weapons, and military equipment, the general said. More ammo, more missiles, more military equipment, more troops, more money, more. That is what Syrsky told collective West officials. And yesterday we had reports from Russian sources which claim that the Russian military, they hit a hotel in the Nikolaev region, which was housing mercenaries. And keep in mind that all of the progress that Russia is now making on the front lines is with a Russian military that really has not changed much since the special military operation. Basically, Russia is still using the military that they started out with from 2 years ago. Remember what Putin said 6 months ago? The Russian military has not even started yet. I think the collective West should believe what Putin says. They should really take what Putin said to heart, because the Russian military has not even started yet. And we are already seeing a collapse on the front lines. So the ambassador of Lithuania to Sweden, ambassador of Lithuania to Sweden, posted on X, if someone hasn't had a chance to take a photo of the Kerch Bridge, it's still time. And it's a photo montage. You can see it on your screen right now of the Kerch Bridge, a missile, and Putin. Putin looking very distressed. I imagine the missile is an ATACMS missile or a Storm Shadow. But that is what the ambassador of Lithuania to Sweden posted. Now, Dmitry Polyansky, Russia's first deputy to the United Nations, replied to, what's the Lithuania ambassador's name to Sweden? Linas Linkevičius. Polyansky replied to Mr. Linas. Looks like infamous Sikorsky tweet on Nord Stream sabotage, which he cowardly deleted, later inspires servile Baltic U.S. lapdogs. They rabidly bark now, but they will pathetically whine later when the judgment day arrives, and all such gaffes will be something they will regret. Referencing, thank you, USA, Sikorsky, the current Polish foreign minister, who at the time of the Nord Stream bombing, I believe he was just an MEP in the European Parliament. And he posted, thank you, USA, when Nord Stream blew up. And then he quickly deleted it. I imagine he deleted it when, I would take a guess at least, this is just a guess, I would say he deleted it when the Biden White House called him up and said, bro, what are you doing? Are you stupid or something? And he probably said, yes, Mr. Biden. White House, I'll delete that tweet. Sorry, sir. Please don't punish me. I imagine something like that went down. But Sikorsky, he got promoted. So he became the foreign minister of Poland. So even when you make stupid mistakes and gaffes, like thank you USA tweets, you still get promoted if you're anti-Russian enough. If you hate Russia enough, then sky's the limit, right? So I imagine that's what this Lithuanian ambassador to Sweden is trying to accomplish, because he's an ambassador to Sweden. He's not the Lithuanian ambassador in Ukraine. He's not the Lithuanian ambassador to Russia. He's the Lithuanian ambassador to Sweden. He really shouldn't be putting up any posts connected to Ukraine, because as the ambassador to Sweden, it's really nothing to do with his position, has nothing to do with his post. So why is he posting this type of stuff about destroying the Kerch Bridge, which is civilian infrastructure and could be interpreted by Russia as promoting a terrorist act? That is what Russia could say, that this ambassador is encouraging terrorism towards the Russian Federation. A very stupid post from this Lithuanian ambassador. But why is he putting this stuff up on Twitter X? Because he probably is looking for a promotion. And he figures the quickest, easiest way to get promoted is to be as Russophobic and as hateful and vicious towards Russia as humanly possible. That will get me promoted quickly, very much like Radoslav Sikorsky. So that's why he's posting this stuff on Twitter X. He's hoping that Blinken or Sullivan will take a look at this tweet and they'll call him up and they will say, Linas, Ambassador Linas, good job. Good job with that tweet about the Kerch Bridge. Good boy. Good Chihuahua, Mr. Linas. You're a very good Chihuahua. Anyway, that's why he's putting this stuff up there. But it's a very stupid thing to post if you're an ambassador of one country to another country, which allegedly has nothing to do with this conflict. Remember, the collective West, Sweden, Lithuania, United States, the UK, they have nothing to do with this conflict. They're not a party to this war. That is what they tell us over and over again. So Peskov was interviewed by Pavel Zarubin, and he threw this out there, Peskov, and he didn't really elaborate much on this statement. But Peskov said that Zelensky's fate is clearly predetermined. And he didn't really get into any details as to what exactly he meant by that. But I imagine that Peskov is saying that Zelensky's term, his official term as president, ends in May. And after that, maybe Russia's not going to recognize Zelensky as the president of Ukraine. I don't know. Or maybe he has some intel which is pointing to far-right forces in Bandera land being very upset with Zelensky and maybe removing Zelensky. Maybe Peskov has intel saying that the collective West would like to promote Yermak, Zelensky's entertainment lawyer. I don't know. I'm just taking guesses here. I'm making guesses as to what Peskov meant with the statement, Zelensky's fate is clearly predetermined. So yesterday I did a story on the Abrams tanks being pulled back from the front lines. And the Ukraine military, they have denied this reporting. This was a story that the AP, the Associated Press, broke. And the Ukraine military, they have since denied this reporting from the AP. The tanks are doing a great job, referencing the Abrams tanks. The tanks are doing a great job on the battlefield, and we are definitely not going to hide from the enemy. Furthermore, we will not leave our infantry without powerful fire support. This is according to a post on Telegram from Ukraine's 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade. So I imagine the Pentagon, they called up the Ukraine military and they said, look, the Associated Press, they are saying that the Abrams tanks suck and they're getting demolished by Russian drones and that you guys are moving those Abrams tanks to the rear. You need to come out with a statement and deny this AP reporting ASAP because it's bad for business. And I imagine that's the call that the Ukraine military got. And so they came out with this statement. We'll find out if the Abrams tanks have been pulled back from the front line or not, because if they're on the front line, then eventually we will have some more Abrams tanks being destroyed most likely by Russian drones, and it would mean that the AP story was not true. If we see no more Abrams tanks being destroyed by Russian drones or being captured by Russia as trophies, then it means that the Abrams tanks have indeed been pulled back from the front. So we'll find out if this story is true. And yesterday in China, they said goodbye to Blinken. That's right. Blinken left China. And there was a video that was making the rounds on social media with Xi Jinping waiting to meet with Blinken, and Xi Jinping is pacing back and forth. He's pacing back and forth. And then he tells someone in the room, when is this guy going to leave? That's what he tells someone in the room. When is this guy going to leave? Referring to Blinken as he's waiting for Blinken to enter the room. And I'm still pacing. And you can hear a voice in the background saying, this evening he's leaving. So Xi Jinping was just, let's get this guy out of here. Let's get this meeting going. I'm going to tell him what I need to tell him. I'll be friendly. I'll be diplomatic, but let's get this guy out of here. So that video was very revealing. And Blinken, he was accompanied to the airport, not by the Chinese foreign minister, not by other Chinese officials, not even the vice deputy to the vice deputy of the deputy of the mayor of Beijing. Nope. Blinken was accompanied by no Chinese officials to the airport to see him off. He was accompanied by the U.S. ambassador to China. Yeah. So that was Blinken's disaster trip to China. I imagine he is now back home in the United States, though from what I understand, Blinken will soon get on a plane and fly to the Middle East in order to continue to make a mess of that region. China at the UN, they are also calling for an official investigation into the Nord Stream sabotage. Yep, China has many ways to get at the United States, or to put pressure on the US, or to put the US in very uncomfortable positions. And one thing that they can do is that they can continue to hammer away at the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. Who blew up Nord Stream? China is asking. Maybe we should have an investigation, China is saying. So China, many ways to strike back at the US. Now Medvedev, he put up a very long post on social media talking about the stealing of Russia's frozen assets. The U.S., they have greenlit, the U.S. House of Representatives, they have greenlit the stealing of Russia's frozen assets, about $5 billion being held in the United States. And Janet Yellen and the Biden White House, they are putting a lot of pressure on the European Union to steal 200 plus or minus billion in Russian frozen assets being held in the European Union. And Medvedev, he gave a hint at what Russia's response would be if the EU does indeed steal this 200 billion in Russian assets in Europe. Here is what Medvedev said, or here's a part of what Medvedev said, because this is a very long post that he put up. Regarding our response to the American law on the confiscation of Russian frozen assets, it's obvious that we cannot provide a fully symmetrical response to this American insolence of shamelessly seizing our assets. The reason is clear. We do not have a significant amount of American state property, including money rights and other assets of the USA. Therefore, the response can only be asymmetric. By the way, it is not certain that it will be less painful. We are talking about enforcement measures, for example, by court order, on the property of private individuals located within the jurisdiction of Russia, money, real estate, and movable property in natural form, property rights. Yes, this is a complex issue, as these individuals usually acted as investors in the Russian economy, and we guaranteed them the inviolability of their rights and private property, but something unforeseen happened. Their state declared a hybrid war against us, including legal and judicial warfare. It created a mechanism for the illegal appropriation of Russian assets, completely contrary to international and our national law. This requires a response. So Medvedev is right. He is 100% correct. Once the collective West, if Europe decides to illegally seize Russian assets being held in Europe, and they open up this Pandora's box, well, then anything goes, huh? We're talking about a financial Wild West, and Russia can then begin to seize Western assets, which were at one time an investment into Russia. These were individuals and entities that were investing into Russia, but because the European Union and the collective West has decided to break international law and seize Russia's frozen assets, Russia is going to have to respond to that illegal action by seizing the assets and the private property of individuals and entities from other countries. So it's a long post from Medvedev, but he makes a lot of interesting points in this post, and he hints at what the response from Russia is going to be if and when the European Union does steal these frozen assets. So here's a chart of the countries that have assets in Russia that would trigger confiscation if the EU pulls the trigger on stealing Russian frozen assets. So you can see the chart on your screen right now. And some interesting countries in this chart: Japan, the US, UK, Canada, Germany, Italy, France, but the two, Switzerland is pretty big, but the two big ones are the Netherlands and Cyprus, teeny tiny Cyprus. So why the Netherlands and Cyprus? Why do they have so much money in Russia? Or why do individuals and businesses and entities, why do they have so many assets in Russia? Well, it's very simple. Because the Netherlands and Cyprus, They acted for many decades as places where Russians would open offshore companies. All right, let's move on and talk about Dr. Jill Stein arrested for protesting at Washington University in St. Louis. Dr. Jill Stein posted on Twitter X, breaking: Jill Stein and her campaign manager and deputy campaign manager, Jason Call and Kelly Merrill Kayer, have been arrested at Washington University in St. Louis while supporting a protest against Wash U's ties to the war on Gaza. So a presidential candidate arrested. Wow. Could you imagine if this was happening? These protests were happening in Russia or Iran or China. People protesting against the governments of the axis of evil, and violent police arrests and arresting an opposition leader or an opposition candidate. If this was taking place in Russia or Iran or China, the US would be pushing hard for a regime change. You know it. The NGOs would be activated, the media puppets would be handed their scripts to read, and there would be a collective West full court press to topple the government that was having to deal with these protesters. And basically the collective West would do everything in their power to cause maximum chaos and to try and initiate some sort of a regime change. That's what would be happening if these protests and the way the authorities were handling these protesters, including arresting an opposition candidate, that's what the US would be doing if this was happening in Russia or Iran or China, or maybe even North Korea, even though North Korea doesn't appear to be in the axis of evil anymore. Anyway, FYI, Israeli Channel 12, they are reporting that Israel expects the ICC, the International Criminal Court, to issue arrest warrants for Netanyahu, Gallant, and Halevi this week. Netanyahu warns ICC rulings would set dangerous precedent. The International Criminal Court is alleged to be poised to issue arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister and senior officials. All right, let's do a clown world, and we can wrap this video up. So we have an interesting clown world because we had a clown world event that took place yesterday in the United States. It was the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And we had politicians along with collective West mainstream media journalists meet at, I believe this was held at the Hilton Hotel in DC. And they all met at the Hilton Hotel for a lavish dinner and comedians and politicians roasting one another. That's basically what took place at the traditional, it's a tradition every year, the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So as the world burns, we had Joe Biden and Kamala and what's her name? Karine Jean-Pierre, is that her name? I always forget her name. The White House spokesperson. Sorry, excuse me. We had all of these people, these politicians, gather at this dinner along with collective West media personalities, and they were joking around and roasting one another and making fun of one another, and of course making fun of Trump as well. And yeah, this was taking place as you have two wars going on and a third war being ramped up with with China. And yeah, that was the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And you actually had protesters outside of the venue, and they were heckling, harassing the politicians and the media personalities who were all decked out in their evening gowns and tuxedos as they were entering the venue. The protesters were chanting slogans, "Free Palestine," and stuff like that. And they even hung a Palestinian flag outside one of the rooms of the hotel, of the Hilton Hotel, where the dinner was being held. Let's see, Biden said during his speech that journalism is clearly not a crime. That is what Biden said. Journalism is not a crime. And he talked about the bravery of journalists. And he took a shot at Vladimir Putin. You know, the narrative that Putin jails journalists and goes after journalists. And he mentioned Evan from the Wall Street Journal. And he said he's going to work to free Evan and the other journalists that Vladimir Putin has imprisoned. Of course, Biden conveniently forgot about Assange, right? Didn't mention anything about Assange, as he was talking about how journalism is not a crime. Anyway, that was the clown show in DC, otherwise known as the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That is the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Look for Europe Day meme shirts. The link is in the description box down below.